Anakin Skywalker was redeemed by his son, Luke Skywalker. We've all heard that before, but there's always been questions about it. What does redemption mean exactly? And how does one moment of doing the right thing make up for countless deaths and destruction? In this video, I want to talk about Anakin Skywalker, and I want to talk about Ahsoka Episode 5 and how I think Dave Filoni might add some commentary to this whole idea of redeeming Anakin. But first, we need to talk about the elephant in the room. Slight spoiler warning here, but technically speaking, we're going to mostly talk about something that's not actually in the show. It was something that was a spoiler. It's apparently cut from the final version of the show. It all has to do with a scene that was shot with Anakin Skywalker on Mustafar, where Ahsoka actually fights against him instead of Obi-Wan. Essentially, it seemed like these world between world scenes were going to set up alternate timeline versions of events that had happened in the Star Wars universe in order to show Ahsoka about destiny. So, if she had stayed with the Jedi Order and Anakin still would have turned to the dark side, and it just would have been her instead of Obi-Wan that fought him on Mustafar. And apparently that scene has been absolutely cut from the final version of this, and actually instead of seeing a lot of these alternate timeline versions of events, we're actually going to see mostly flashbacks to some scenes with Anakin and Ahsoka and others during the Clone Wars. But I still actually think a lot of these same ideas are going to be in Episode 5. I mean, Dave originally wanted to do something as crazy as alternate timelines, showing us Anakin fighting against Ahsoka on Mustafar. There was supposed to be a scene where Ahsoka kills Thrawn and yet still arrives at this moment and probably goes into the new galaxy. It's like the ideas of destiny and the idea that Anakin was always going to turn to the dark side, that Anakin was going to eventually turn back to the light side. I believe that's all stuff that was on Filoni's mind. And so now I'm kind of wondering, like, is Dave just going to do that same thing, but show us it through flashbacks, showing us some stuff that just shows us the nature of Anakin, how he was always going to give into the dark side, but he always had a light side as well. But I think this all kind of begs the question, how could he even be redeemed? What does that even mean for a person like Anakin Skywalker that caused so much death and destruction? So if you've been following any of my videos or streams or the theories that I have, you'll know that I don't think that's Anakin Skywalker the Jedi at the end of Episode 4 of Ahsoka. And there's actually a line that the father says to Anakin in the Mortis arc of the Clone Wars that I think sums this up perfectly.
I am neither Sith nor Jedi. I am much more. And so are you.
So you see, the father at Mortis already tells Anakin that he's far beyond what a Sith or a Jedi is, and that's what Anakin is as well. And remember that the father wanted Anakin to remain on Mortis as an anchorite and replace him watching over the universe, keeping the Force in balance. So basically, that's what I think is going on with Anakin now. He now lives essentially in the cosmic Force, watching over all of reality. And if this is true, it would link Anakin to incredible power, including the power of the world between worlds. And via this power, he would have the ability to change reality. Anakin could go back in time and save his mother. He could save Padme. He could stop himself from killing the millions of people that he did. And we have to imagine that Anakin, being mortal, at least partially mortal, would want to do this because he feels the guilt for all of the things that he has done wrong. And I mean, saving Padme is like his entire driving force. That is the thing that gets him to go to the dark side. And so he wants to undo these horrible things that I believe he now feels guilty for, but he also understands that he can't. He can't risk breaking reality. Messing with the fabric of space and time at that level could destroy everything, could end the lives of everything. And these are similar lessons to the lessons that Ezra Bridger learns when he goes into the world between worlds with Sabine in season 4 of Rebels. But unlike Ezra Bridger, Anakin Skywalker's responsible personally for like way more evil and dark things. So again, I think the question remains, how could you ever consider Anakin to be redeemed after all of these horrible things have happened. Anakin is the chosen one. He is born of the Force in order to bring balance to it. And I think in order to have balance, you need to understand the darkness as well as the light. So you see this little boy that we meet in The Phantom Menace, who was born into slavery with powers beyond most mortal men, was destined to meet a devil and be tricked by that devil into slavery again. This innocent child was cursed and damned from birth. And yet at the very end, the flesh of his flesh, his own son, does what he could not. He sees the tormented person that his father is behind the mask and within the suit. And Luke Skywalker also sees his own future becoming just like his father unless he becomes selfless. And then Anakin Skywalker seeing his own son suffer again because he made the choice to not fight, to just be selfless, which was a choice Anakin couldn't make at the time. That triggers something in Anakin. It brings him back from the brink of destruction. And then Anakin Skywalker does the thing that nobody else could do, and that's destroy the Emperor, stop the Empire, and give the New Republic a chance. And I know for some fans this still isn't going to make sense. It still doesn't feel like Anakin is redeemed, but it reminds me a lot of the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is a holy book in the Hindu religion, and it's essentially about a prince that has to go to war with a bunch of his own family in order to secure the throne for himself. And it's basically about this prince sitting there and seeing all of these fathers and sons, and he doesn't want to partake in this battle, and he finds it to be meaningless. And he's visited by Krishna, who is basically the god of everything. And Krishna essentially implies to this prince that Krishna himself has already killed everybody on this battlefield and will kill everything that ever lived over and over again infinitely, but not really killed them. The essence or the spirit of these things and these people could not actually be affected, but the cosmos itself, reality itself, needs both destruction and creation. And it's not for mortal people to really grasp and understand the inner workings of how reality works, but it is instead their responsibility to just follow their dharma, to make the decisions and be the thing that they are supposed to be within the universe. And to me, this feels very similar to the story of Anakin Skywalker. Anakin did go to the dark side, and I think he had to go to the dark side to fully understand it. And not only that, the dark side is necessary. You can't just remove the dark from the universe, then you would just have a different kind of death, as the light and life itself would just expand forever and rot under the weight of its own expansion. It's almost like what Balin talks about. You need to have destruction in order to have creation. And this is a really weird concept because it kind of takes some of the responsibility off of Anakin, and I don't think that's necessarily the right thing to do, because Anakin absolutely made choices that caused all of this destruction that was really, really horrible. And I think there's an argument to be made that even Anakin going to the dark side and then being redeemed could have happened in like a million different ways. The way it ended up happening caused Anakin to live this really lonely life. He was really a bad person for a long time and caused all of this damage and suffering. And so if he's still alive, if that's really him in the world between worlds, he's just got to now live with that. And again, he probably fully understands now that it was his choices that made it like the worst possible version of that. Maybe there's a version where he didn't lose his limbs. Maybe there's a version where he just goes to the dark side like he did with the Sand People after his mother was killed, but then returns to the light before all this other bad stuff happens. And at the end of the day, redeeming a character like Anakin Skywalker that did all this bad stuff is a really weird idea, and this sort of cosmic reality of dark side and light being necessary is really weird. It's a weird idea. It's hard for people to wrap their heads around, and maybe that's ultimately why Dave decided to just remove some of these scenes and not go as hard on trying to hammer that point home. But I hope that a lot of the concepts and the ideas that were on Dave's mind while he was was originally coming up with these scenes. I hope that they still make their way in to episode 5 via these flashbacks, and I hope that there's some commentary added on what redemption means, what is destiny, how does the Force work, what's the deal with the light side and the dark side. And so I'm hopeful that that stuff's still going to be in episode 5, and if it is, we will break it down in another video, because I love this kind of stuff, like the philosophy behind Star Wars, the philosophy behind Anakin. It's really freaking cool. And guys, there's 8 days left in the Kickstarter for my comic book Unity. It's an awesome post-apocalyptic superhero comic book, and we're so close to our goal, but this campaign is all or nothing. So if we don't get to that $50,000 goal, then we don't raise any of the money. Check out the book on Kickstarter. If it seems interesting to you, pick up a copy, or you can just support the campaign to help us bring this thing to life. New IP, myself and the team, thanks you for your time. As I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.